All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a genuinely fascinating case study in behavioral shaping, and it centers around a subject who is full of life, bursting with energy, and, well, just a little bit flawed. Meet Max. Max is a golden retriever, and by week 5 of his initial training, he was literally the pride of his neighborhood. He'd mastered all the basics, right? He knew how to sit, stay, come when called, and he walked beautifully on a leash. But, like a lot of enthusiastic learners out there, Max had a couple of glaring behavioral blind spots that his owner, Sarah, really needed to address. And honestly, how she fixed them is an absolute masterclass in behavioral psychology that we can all take something away from.
So you can instantly see the core conflict Sarah was up against here. On one hand, you had the ultimate goal, a calm, well-adjusted canine companion. But the reality? Despite knowing all his basic commands, Max had two very specific, highly disruptive flaws. First, whenever visitors came over to the house, he'd get so overwhelmed with excitement that he would literally launch himself into the air, jumping on everyone. And second, the absolute second he heard another dog barking outside, he'd just join right in, barking loudly and endlessly. It was your classic clash between trained obedience and raw, unfiltered animal impulse.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the too friendly golden retriever.
To tackle this, Sarah actually had to shift her own mindset first. She knew deep down that Max wasn't being naughty or spiteful or deliberately disobedient. He was just overly excited, and her foundational belief became this: excitement can be guided with patience. She understood that an excited dog, or really an excited mind of any kind, doesn't need to be scolded or shouted at or physically pushed away. Doing that usually just adds way more chaotic energy to the whole situation. Instead, she realized this raw excitement needed to be guided with a calm, deliberate, and incredibly patient approach. She was basically going to use her own calmness as a tool to shape his behavior.
Which brings us right into Section 2, stopping the jumping habit.
Let's actually break down exactly how Sarah dismantled this habit of lunging at guests. It started on a sunny afternoon when her friend Emma came over for tea. The doorbell rings, and instantly Max races to the entrance. His tail is wagging wildly, his energy is absolutely through the roof, and the second that door opens, boom, he jumps high into the air, putting his paws right on Emma. Now Emma, being a great friend, just laughs it off and says, "Hello, Max." But Sarah knows this is the exact moment she has to intervene. The chaos is totally peaking.
But instead of matching that chaotic energy, look at what Sarah does here. She simply turned around and completely ignored him. Let's just pause for a second and appreciate that contrast. No shouting, no pushing, no yanking on the collar. She stayed completely grounded. By simply trying her back, she silently and totally withheld the one thing Max was desperately looking for, which was attention. Max was so confused by this, he tried jumping again, but Sarah just held her ground, continuing to ignore him completely until, finally, he stopped jumping and just sat quietly.
And guys, this brilliantly illustrates the behavioral math just clicking into place inside Max's head. The very second he sat quietly, Sarah immediately knelt down, smiled, said, "Good boy, Max," and gave him a treat and a pat on the head. Emma jumped in with the praise too. So jumping yielded absolutely zero results because he was ignored, but sitting calmly, that instantly earned him the attention and the treats he was craving. Over the next few days, practicing with neighbors and family, that rule remained absolute. Jumping meant no one paid attention to you. Sitting meant a shower of praise. And very, very quickly, sitting by the door just became his automatic response.
Okay, with the jumping habit handled, we move to Section 3, conquering the excessive barking.
So, picture this. One evening, a completely new challenge pops up. A dog across the street starts barking, and Max immediately runs to the window to join in with this loud, endless woof, woof, woof. Now, Sarah applied a very similar philosophy here, but with a highly specific 3-step methodology. Step 1, she didn't try to yell over his barking. She simply waited for absolute silence. Step 2, in that split second of natural silence, when Max paused just to catch his breath, she calmly said the command, "Quiet." Step 3, she instantly rewarded him with a treat. When Max looked surprised and eventually started barking again, she simply rinsed and repeated the process.
Looking at how this builds over time, when the barking begins, you just wait patiently. When the dog naturally pauses for breath, you introduce the command, "Quiet." And while they are staying calm, you reinforce it with a treat and praise. Little by little, working through this exact timeline, Max began connecting the auditory word quiet directly with the physical act of staying calm and just keeping his mouth closed.
Now, for the real challenge in Section 4, the ultimate party test.
Because, training in a quiet, perfectly controlled living room is one thing, right? But behavioral conditioning is only truly successful if it survives the chaos of the real world. Will this training actually hold up against a thunderstorm, fireworks, and a house completely full of guests? Well, weeks later, Sarah was about to put Max through a seriously high-stakes stress test. A massive thunderstorm rolls in, rain pounding the windows, distant dogs barking, and then the real challenge hits: Sarah's birthday party. The house is completely filled with friends, neighbors, laughing kids, soft music, and just boundless excitement.
Well, just look at these incredible results. When the first guest arrived at the party, totally bracing themselves for the old jumping Max, he instead sat politely right by the door, literally earning him the title of a gentleman from the guests. During the thunderstorm a few weeks prior, when he stood up to bark, Sarah simply said quiet, and he stopped instantly for a belly rub. And the grand climax of the birthday party? Loud fireworks started crackling in the distance, setting off all the neighborhood dogs. Max ran to the window, sure, but when Sarah calmly said quiet, he paused and actually chose to sit calmly right beside her instead. In every single chaotic scenario, he chose calm behavior over his wild, natural instincts. No way, right? It actually worked.
Let's zoom out a bit for Section 5, the psychology of calmness. When Emma was staring in absolute amazement at Max's transformation during that party, Sarah just smiled and revealed the simple truth behind the whole thing. She said, "It wasn't magic. We simply rewarded calm behavior and ignored the behaviors we didn't want." And honestly, that is the ultimate takeaway of this explainer. Effective behavioral training isn't about dominance, it's not about shouting, and it's definitely not magic tricks. It's about incredibly consistent, highly structured behavioral shaping. You essentially starve the negative behavior of any attention, and you heavily finance the positive behavior with rewards.
Later, as the party was winding down, Sarah sat there scratching Max behind the ears, and she summarized a pretty profound realization. Being calm doesn't mean you can't be excited. It just means learning when to relax. This shows us that effective training doesn't crush a dog's spirit or erase their joy. Max still had his wagging tail, he still had those loving eyes. Instead, this training teaches vital emotional regulation. It literally gives the dog the tools to process their own excitement.
Basically, Max had learned the true currency of connection. Love and attention are not earned by frantic jumping. They certainly aren't earned by endless chaotic barking. They are earned through trust, through patience, and through calm behavior. These three pillars became the brand new foundation of Max and Sarah's relationship, allowing Max to drift off into a peaceful sleep that night, totally knowing he had made his owner proud.
Which leaves us with a pretty compelling final thought to consider here. The principles Sarah used don't just apply to golden retrievers. They apply to all forms of behavioral reinforcement. So, what behaviors are you inadvertently rewarding in your own life, or, with your own pets? Are you accidentally giving your attention to the exact chaos you want to stop? Think about it for a second, and consider how just a little bit of patience, and maybe a strategic lack of attention, might just transform your own chaotic moments into calm.